All right, I'm going to walk through the stat tracker project. And what we're going to be creating is a program that allows us to click a button or to accept user input and then be able to output in a label or any sort of output that you can see, update statistics based off of what you pressed. For example, you have the option in here to have a bunch of buttons across the top of the screen or wherever you want them on the screen. And every time you click a button, that some sort of statistics are being tracked based off of what you clicked. So let's say you're creating a program to keep track of basketball statistics, and you want to keep track of every player's stats as it happens in real time. And you sit there and you click every single time there's a shot taken, every single time someone scores, every single time it's a three-pointer, every single time someone gets fouled, right? And you're instantly going through this app and you're clicking, or this program, and you're clicking the statistics as they happen. But then after that button is clicked, the stats are updated real time, either below or somewhere in the program. So this does not have to be sports related. It doesn't have to be basketball related. I'm probably going to choose soccer in this example, but it doesn't have to be sports related. Just something that allows you to click buttons or have some sort of collection of user input and then being able to keep track of those stats. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start off and I'm going to open up a new TK, sorry. I'm going to use tkinter, but I'm going to open up a new Python file in idle. And then I'm going to save it as, I don't know, this is going to be the stat tracker project. So I'll just say stat and I'll pick the date 2021, not picking the date, I'm typing the date. That'd be nice to pick the date. This is just my naming convention, the year, the month, the day, and the time. All right, so like I said, I'm going to be using the tkinter module from Python. So I'll say from tkinter import all. All right, and that imports what I need for this project. I'm also going to create a main window. I want my project to be able to appear, my program to appear in a main window. A common name for that is root, right? I'm going to be creating from the TK class. Every time you see root, just think that's my main window. And then I want to keep that window open, so I'll say root.main loop. And I'll run it just to show you what it does. It pulls open my window and it keeps it open. All right, there's my window. If I want to change the title of it, I'll say root.title and I'll just say stat tracker. And I'll run it again and I'll have to make it a little bit bigger there. But as you see, there goes my light. And there's stat tracker across the top. Off to a good start. So I'm going to go ahead and draw how I want this to look, just so you can see what's going on in my head. So I'm going to go ahead and put my buttons across the very top of the screen. So let me show you. So let's say the very first button that I create, it says goal on it. And every single time I click that button, goal, it keeps track of the goals scored. And then let me create another button here, and I'll call it assist. And what's another stat? I'll say shot. You take a shot. And then I also, this is kind of a made up stat, but I use it a lot as an assistant coach, right? Or keeping track of stats of a game. Since soccer, there's not a lot of stats between goals, assists, shots, keep track of corner kicks. I made up a stat called plus. And every time someone does something good, they get a plus, whether that's they steal the ball from someone, they complete a pass, or I don't know, just something they do good throughout the game. And I'm like, oh, that was good, plus, plus. And every time they do something bad, they get a minus. So it's like, oh, they lost the ball, or oh, they got a goal scored on them, minus, right? So those are kind of made up stats, but I'll show you why I'm keeping track of those stats later on. So I got my plus, minus, I don't know, add a couple more. I'll say like Y for yellow card. You get a yellow card in soccer whenever you do something like kind of bad. And then you get a red card, which means you have to leave the game. That's like you're ejected from the game. If you get 2 yellows, then you get thrown out and you get a red card. But if you get 1 red card, like you can do something really bad and they won't even give you a yellow, they'll just pull out a red card. And throughout my soccer career, I have gotten a lot of yellow cards. In some cases, I've led the league in yellow cards, but I've never gotten a red card. Now that I say that, I'm probably going to end up getting a red card, right? So I've never gotten a red card. I've been thrown out of baseball games. Like I've been ejected. The umpire threw me out of baseball games. I don't think I ever got ejected from a basketball game. But in soccer, I would get a lot of yellow cards. So I'm just keeping track of this. Like I said, I put my stats across the top there. These are all buttons. Everything in here, these are all buttons. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create labels beneath them that's going to keep track of the number. So like each of these are going to eventually have zeros in them to start. They're going to initialize. Those variables are going to initialize as 0. Right. So let's say I guess to explain how all this works, right? Let's say I'm keeping track of, let's say I go to watch a player and I'm scouting that player throughout the game. And I'm sitting there on the sidelines, I'm watching the game, and imagine I have my program open and someone scores a goal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click this goal button. And when I click that goal button, it's going to update it. The label below, it's going to update it to 1 more than it was before. And when they scored a goal, I guess that means they did something good. So I'm going to go ahead and update this and add 1 to it. Then let's say they take a shot, right? So I'll go ahead and click the shot button, and this will be updated to 1. Let's say they take another shot, right? And then this would be updated to 2, and so on. So, as you go through this, you're clicking buttons. And like I said, it doesn't have to be sports related, it doesn't have to be soccer related. It can be however you want, but you're clicking buttons and these labels with numbers in them are being updated based off of the button click. At the end, we're going to do some sort of calculation and show that calculation via output as well. Okay, so starting off, I'm going to put my buttons across top of the screen. That's what I'm going to do. You don't have to, but know that you have to have some sort of user input and then be able to show that output. I'm going to use buttons and labels to do that. So first thinking off, all right, starting off, I'm going to go ahead and I'll say goal button. I'm going to create a new button and I'm going to put that button in the root. And the text for the button is going to say goal. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and create a few more buttons, right? I'm going to have an assist button, a shot button, a plus button, a minus button. I guess I'll do yellow card, red card too. I'll just do exactly what I had before. So this wouldn't be the goal button. This would be the assist button. And then I'm going to have the shot button. I'll add yellow cards up here, yellow card, and I'll say red card. And this will be my plus button. This will be my minus button. And I'll have to change the text here as well. I'll say assist, shot, yellow, red, and then I'll just put the plus symbol there. I'll say plus, and then minus. To make it a little bigger, I might just do it like this. Yeah. Put a plus on each, or a space on each side. All right. So these are my buttons that I'm going to have, and also I want to make sure to include labels too. So got my buttons. Maybe I'll put a comment there, and I'll say create buttons. Now what I'm going to do is I'll put a comment. This is where I'm going to create my labels. So I'm going to go ahead and say goal label, and that's going to be a label, and it's going to be in the root. And starting off, I'm going to have the text be something. I'll show you in a second what I want it to be. But I'm going to go ahead and start with that. And then I'm going to copy this. I want it to start off being 0. I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a few variables next. So I've got my goal label, my assist label, my shot label, I'll say yellow label, I'll say red label. Maybe I'll make these plural because goals, assists, shots, yellows, reds, pluses, and this will be minuses. All right, so I've got my labels here, but what text do I want them? Well, I want them to update every single time a button clicks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to initialize some variables. I'll create a variable called goals, set it to 0. Assists, set it to 0. Shots, yellows, reds, pluses, and minuses. All right, and these will initialize all my variables before I start. So, whenever I open up my program, all the stats will be able to reset to 0. Let's just say I'm not saving these as the program closes. We lose track of all our stats, which if I'm like taking a screenshot of it and not keeping track of long-term stats, that works. But if you are, I guess I'll say initialize variables. If you are keeping track of stats over a longer period of time, you want to be able to save these. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'm just going to give you the easiest way of accomplishing this. So I'll say initialize variables. All right, so what I'll do here is I need to say the text for goals label. It's going to be goals. This is going to be assists. Right, this is going to be shots. And then yellows, reds, pluses, and minuses. All right, so I've created my buttons, I've created my labels. If I were to run this right now, nothing would show up because I haven't put them in the correct spaces yet. What I mean by that is I haven't actually used the grid method. I haven't used pack. I haven't put them on the screen. So if you're looking here, this would be column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be row 0 and row 1. My pen keeps going on. So I'm going to go ahead here and take a look. Remember, computers start counting at 0. So this will be my 0 column. This will be my 1 column, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be my 0 row and my one row. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go ahead and, even though I've created these, nothing's going to show up on the screen yet because I haven't actually put them in my main window. The way you would do that, you can use the grid method or the pack method to make mine look nice. I'm going to use the grid method. So I'll say like goal button dot grid, and I'll say row 0, column 0. And I'll do that whole first row to start off. So I'll do the goals, assist, shot, yellow, red, plus, minus. I'll have copy and paste in here, right? So I'll say assist button. Make sure you spell everything right and you're not changing up. A simple spelling mistake could end up resulting in program not running. Say plus button and the minus button. So these are all going to be in the 0 row, but the column is going to change each time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So all of my buttons should be up on my screen, not the labels yet, just the buttons. So we take a look at it. I've got all my buttons up there. I can click them, but they don't do anything yet either, right? So cool, awesome. Now let's put the labels beneath them. So I'm going to go ahead back here, and I'll say I copy it. Yeah, let's go ahead and copy it. I'm going to be lazy. Check this out. No, I'll just go ahead and do it this way. This will probably be the easiest way. Label, dot grid. See, I'm copying there. Pay attention. This is going to go in row 1 beneath it, and then the column is going to start off being the 0 column. All right, now I'm going to copy and paste this. This is probably the easiest way. Assist, shot, yellows, reds, pluses, minuses. All right, so not the goals label. This is the assists label. This one is the shots label. This one is the yellows, reds, the pluses, and the minuses. Row 1, say column 1, column 2. Remember, we start counting at 0, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so everything looks good. Let me go ahead and run it and make sure everything looks good. All right, cool. So what I want to do is I want to set it so every single time I click the goal button, what I want to do is I want to update this label here. So let's go ahead and add some button functionality. So I'll go ahead and create some comments real quick, and I'll say, no, I'll just leave it there for now. Always changing my mind. All right, so if I go to my buttons, I want to add some functionality, which means whenever I click the goal button, I want to do something. I want to run a command. And the command that I'm going to create, the function, is going to be, let's say, well, maybe I'll take a step back. I'll do this. I'm going to create a list of my buttons. So I'll just call this buttons, and I'm going to create a list. And in this list, I'm going to add goal button, assist button. This is to save time later and create less functions. I think I can do this in one function. Yellow button, rather than creating a like add 1 to red function, add 1 to goal function. I can do this all in one function here, and I'll show you what I'm doing in a second. I'm just adding all of my buttons. I'm just creating a list of all my buttons. right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 buttons, right? And then I'm going to create a list of my labels. And I'll say labels, and exactly what I had here, goals, whoops, create a list. You use square brackets to create a list. And I'll say goals, label, assists, label, shots, label, yellows, label, reds, label, pluses. Always the fun part, typing out all this. And then I'll say minuses. Hopefully I spelled everything right. If I didn't, oh well, I'll find out later. So I create a list of my buttons and create a list of my labels. The reason is because I'm going to, you can go and create like a bunch of different functions. Like you can write define, add 1 to goals, add 1 to assists, add 1 to shots. That takes up so much time and you can write it in a lot less code. So like when I first started programming, that's how I would have done it. I just would have defined a bunch of functions like define, add, goal, right? And I would have said like, hey, when you go to this function, add 1 to the variable goal. And that works, right? But it's not clean and you can write your program in such a less amount of time. I'm going to create this function here or define the function, and it's going to be called add 1. And I'm going to go ahead and pass this right now. When I type in pass, that just means like I'll worry about it in a little bit. All right, so if I look at my buttons and I want every single time for there to be a command, whenever the goal button is clicked, what happens? Well, I want it to run the add 1 function. So I'm going to use lambda, and this is going to save me time later. I'm going to say lambda add 1, and then I'm going to pass it a number. And since the goal is my very first button and my first label, I'm going to put 0 in there with that index. Let me go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to go ahead and put this here, there, and there. Okay, so now that I just copy and pasted all that, I'm going to go ahead and add number 0, 1, 2, 3, keep on going all the way down to 6, 4, 5, 6. And this is the argument that we're going to pass in it. We're going to pass this number in, which means that this has to accept the parameter. And I'm just going to call this num for number. All right. So this is important. So what do we want to happen? If we think back to our example, all right, if I click the goal button, I want to update this label. And I want to update it and add 1 to it. So there's a variable that it updates first. So I click goal. I want to add 1 to the goal variable. All right. So maybe I guess I got to add a third list then. So my third list is going to be, I'll go ahead and say, maybe I'll put it up here. I'll say stats. And my stats, my list of stats are going to be goals, assists, shots, yellows, reds, pluses, and minuses. All right, so I have all of my stats in here as well. So I have 3 lists. I have stats, buttons, and labels. See how goals lines up here? That's important. See how assists lines up here? Very important. Shots is the second index. Yellows is the third index. Very, very, very important for what I'm about to do. All right. So I'm adding 1. So what I want to do is, let's say I were to click on goal. I want to add 1 to the goal variable. So, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'll say stats, which are my stats right here. Which one is goals? Goals is 0. Remember, if I click the goal button, it sends it 0. So I'll say the index of whatever the num is. So whichever stat that I choose, I want to add 1 to it. Okay? I'm going to add 1 to that stat. And then, after I've added 1 to that stat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and let's say I want to update the label. So I'll say labels and then index it with the number. Whoops. I'll say labels, index it with the number, and configure it. I'm going to configure the text, and the text is going to be whatever stat I just updated right there. Right? So let me kind of, if you're like, wait, what's going on? Let me back up a little bit. All right. I actually don't need, I need this list of buttons. I don't think I need this list. Let me comment it out first. I need it. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I click on the goal button. I'm going to send a command to this function called add1. I'm going to send a command, and I'm going to pass an argument of 0. So this 0 goes up here. It says, all right, in the stats, index 0. So I go to stats. Okay, that's the goals variable. Awesome. What am I doing with it? I'm adding 1 to it. Then, once I've added 1 to it, I'm going to update the label to make sure goals and then the 1 shows up. So I go to my labels. Remember that the labels line up directly. Goals, goals, assists, assist, shots, shots. Very important in this, right? I'm going to configure the label with the corresponding index. So it would be goals 0. So for the goal label, goals label, I'm going to configure the text to be whatever this is now, right? Stats num. Let's go ahead and run it. Let's see if it works. Oh, invalid syntax. Let's see where it's at. Oh, forgot a close parenthesis here. All right. Ready? And let's see. All right, moment of truth. I'm going to go up here and click goal. When I click goal, it should update to 1, and it did. Let's try plus. Notice that instead of writing different functions for each button, I wrote one function, and it adds 1 to it. If I score another goal, I'd say they're doing really good, minus, and then you get a red card and you're out of the game. So you scored 2 goals, you did 7 good things, and you had 3 minuses. I guess if you get a red card, I'll give you another minus. So we've kept track of these stats. Now, I mentioned briefly that you're going to have to also perform a calculation, which means with the stats that are collected, let's look at that. Let's look at that data and let's analyze it as well. And let's say this is a statistic that I kind of made up for soccer, but I mean you can choose whatever you want, however you want to do this. But let's say I want to add on another button, or no, I guess it wouldn't be another button. I guess it would be a label that's next to it. Maybe we'll put it below. I want to be able to take a look at my pluses and minuses that are collected and say, all right, your 7 pluses, 4 minuses, your score, and I call it your Z score is going to be 3, 7 minus 3. Okay. And then I have a second stat that I keep track of, and I call it the Z quality or ZQ. And the z quality is going to be 7 divided by 11, which is 7 divided by whatever the total plus minus is, 7 plus 4. So let me just show you. I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll just create 2 labels onto the end there. That's probably what I end up doing. All right, so what I'll do here is I'll say, then you have to update it. Let me think. All right, we'll go ahead and just do it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have I'm going to go ahead and create another label. And the label that I create is going to be called, let's call this z-score label. And the z-score label is just going to be the plus minus the minuses. So I'll say label, I'll put it in the root, and I'll put the text starting off. It's going to be the variable z-score. And I'll have to add that variable z-score, initialize it to 0. And I'll just start off with that 1 and we'll see how it goes. All right, so there's my label. I'm going to put this, I'm going to put this actually, I'm going to grid it in the top row right here. So I'll say z-score label dot grid. It's going to be in row 0, column 7. And the text shouldn't be z-score. The text should actually say z. All right, and I'll run it. All right, so I got z-score up here. Remember, I want a label because I'm not going to actually be clicking it, and then for the stat to show up down here. All right, so I'm going to create another label, and I'll call this one, I'll call it z-score total label. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in the root. And the text for it now is going to be the actual z-score. And then I'm going to put it at the very bottom. I'll say z-score total, and then the label grid. I'm going to put this in the same row as the one in column 7. All right, so what do I want to do? Well, first, let's go ahead and run it. Let's see where we're at. All right, so I've got this stat called z-score. Notice it's not a button. I can't click on it. But as this gets updated, as plus and minus get clicked, all right, I need to also be updating the z-score. And the z-score is going to take the plus and the minus, and it's going to subtract them. So, all right, so first let's go ahead and create a function that does that. I'm going to go ahead and define, I'm going to call this z update. Okay, and it's going to update the z-score every single time this function is run. And what I want it to do is, I want it to first, I'm going to use the pluses. I'm going to use the minuses. I'm using the global variable that's accessible throughout the entire program. So pluses, minuses, Well, actually, you know what? I might not even have to use that. I might just refer right to my list here. So I'll say whenever that happens, whenever z update is run, I need to take the pluses and subtract the minuses from it. So I'll say like stats, remember this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll say stats 5 minus stats 6. And then I'll go ahead and I will have a global, I'll say global z-score to access this variable that I'm keeping track of, and I'll update it. So I'll say z-score. Okay. All right, awesome. And then once I've done that, once I've actually updated the z-score variable, I need to update the z-score label. And I called that z-score total label. I'm going to configure the text. So configure the text. And the text is going to be the z-score. Right? And I'm going to go ahead and this is right there, z update. And I'm going to go ahead and run this. And if I click plus, notice my z-score goes up 1. If I click minus, it goes down 1. Plus, plus, plus. The difference between 4 and 1 is 3. Minus 2. So if you have like a higher z-score, that means that you had a better game. But if it's like you can get in the negatives, right? I've had players get in the negatives with their z-score. Not a good game. Usually they're subbed out by now. So, make sure there's some sort of calculation done. All right. So just to walk through once more, I have my stat tracker, keeping track of goals, assists, shots, right? Whenever I click the button, the stats are being tracked. I also want to make sure you do this at least one sort of calculation that's done with the statistics that you've collected. It can be as simple as adding or subtracting, or it could be as complicated as dividing or finding the square root of. Entirely up to you. All right, so some calculation needs to be performed with a total here at the end. All right, so let me walk through this one more time. So I have, in the very beginning, I initialized my variables. I got my variables here: goals, assists, shots, yellows, reds, pluses, minuses, and my z-score. All right, I initialized them all to 0 to start. I also have two functions. I wrote two functions. This one accepts a parameter num. Really the point of this function is to add 1 to any variable once a button is clicked. And this saves me a lot of time, this function right here, by passing in this number. The z update updates the z-score every time that it's run. I create a list of my stats. And thinking of that, I can go ahead and actually clear out this list of buttons. I didn't need it. It was commented out before. If you have trouble looking for it, I commented that out before. But I have my buttons, my goal, assist, shot, yellow, red, plus, minus buttons. That's where that came from. And then I have my labels, goals, assists, shots, yellows, reds. These are all here. I have my z-score label, which ends up being in the top row, and then my z-score total, which is right below it. And then I create a list of my labels. I can go ahead and do this if I really want to make it look clean up a little bit. Click create a list of my labels, so that way I was able to update them accordingly. I also have organized them in a grid where this is my 0 index, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's why the column numbers are as is. 0 row is actually the first row, but computers start counting as 0. And then row 1, which is actually the second row. I put that all in the main loop. Okay, so I went ahead and created this project. You can go ahead and do it however you want. Add color to it, make it look nice. I just wanted to show you the simplest possible way of doing it. If you wanted to make it more complicated, entirely up to you. Add some pluses in here, my z-score goes up, and minuses, it goes down. And that is the stat tracker project. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you're going through the project and you are trying to make it your own and you don't want to have to do anything with soccer, that's fine. You can make it about anything you want as long as a button is clicked, a label is updated, and some sort of calculation happens behind the scenes. The calculation could be as simple as addition or subtraction, or it could be more difficult, entirely up to you. That's the Stat Tracker project.